If your goal is to learn everything you need to get started with yoga in the fastest and easiest way possible, then this video is for you. But spoiler alert, what you're probably after is not yoga itself, but something even more important. Either way, this is worth sticking around for, because the main purpose for our short time together today is to give you confidence where you may have uncertainty and provide you clarity where you may have confusion. Hi, I'm Kate. What I'm about to share with you today is based on my decades of experience and real-world experimentation with yoga. You see, since 2005, I've taught tens of thousands of brand new people just like you how to start, thrive, and be successful with the practice. As the founder of One Flow Yoga, an award-winning yoga studio in Northern California, I've had a front row seat to the mistakes and missteps that can happen when learning yoga. And I've used that understanding to create a method of teaching beginners that allows you to progress faster and have a lot more fun doing it. This includes everyone from people returning from a break to those who never thought they could learn yoga. So in full transparency, I'm also sharing some of the insights I've had in working with the students who have gone through our Beginner Series course, because they've given me some of the best feedback on how to help other beginners just like yourself. I encourage you to watch and rewatch this video because it will give you everything you need to start yoga successfully. More than that, I'm going to give you a roadmap to follow so you know exactly what to do during your first 30 days. And just so we start with the right mindset, imagine you hired me as your personal guide to yoga. Why does this matter? Well, this video is free, so many people will dismiss the value of it, or they'll make a bigger mistake and fail to take action. And that's a shame, because I'm going to be giving you my best. But in return, I'm going to be asking you for something. And that is to actually see yourself doing what I show you. That small act is powerful and already puts you ahead because it shows you're the kind of person who does things instead of just talking about them. So, what are people really after when they get curious about yoga? Well, there are three things. They want to find a way to relieve stress and anxiety. They want to improve their physical health, which includes being stronger, more flexible, and in less pain. And number three, they want to feel more grounded and develop a deeper connection with themselves and others. Imagine a life where you feel strong, flexible, and pain-free, and where you are calm, centered, and more connected than ever before. Yoga can give you all that. Now, right now, you might be wondering if this is truly possible. Maybe you tried yoga a few times, but it didn't work out. Or you're worried if yoga is really for you. I get it, but there's good news because as your guide, it's my job to help you with your worries. More specifically, I'm going to help you to go from feeling unsure, intimidated, and discouraged to feeling calm, resilient, and content. Best of all, it's easier than you might think. First, a warning. You might be tempted to watch a few minutes of this video, try to get a few yoga tips, and then move on. And yes, you'll learn the critical things like the equipment you need, the best type of yoga for beginners, and how often to practice. But you'll also get much more than that if you watch all the way through, like understanding how the roadmap works. Because this video is designed to help you start and be successful with yoga. I made it because I see too many people struggle to learn yoga. They don't know where to look or how to begin, so they end up searching for random yoga videos to try. But random videos give you random results. And then when people don't get the results they want, they quit in frustration. There's a better way to learn yoga. Because remember, now you have a personal guide. I'll give you the insider's point of view and teach you the things that truly make a difference. Things that aren't usually shared. And by the end of this, you'll have a plan to make progress. Real progress. And any plan needs to start with some basic understanding. After all, what use is a map that doesn't get you to where you want to go? So the first stage of our roadmap is called identify. We have to know what's what. This brings us to the first thing to know about learning yoga. There are two types of beginners. That's true. So which are you? Well, that's simple. If you're someone who hasn't done any physical exercise in at least the last 2 years, you're probably a true beginner. That's true even if you regularly worked out or did marathons a decade ago. It still makes sense to put you in the true beginner category. Of course, you're also a true beginner if you've never exercised consistently. Why are we talking about this? Well, knowing which kind of beginner you are is going to help you make progress faster because you're going to be doing what you need to do based on where you're at. And this prevents one of the first mistakes people make. They try to take classes that aren't right for them. And when they can't keep up, they get discouraged and frustrated. So if you're a true beginner, own it. But maybe you're the other kind of beginner, an active beginner. An active beginner is someone who regularly does exercise or physical activity 2 to 3 times a week on average. And that activity might mean you go for walks. It can also mean you're a runner, play ice hockey, even salsa dance. The point is, you're doing something that elevates your heart rate and increases your physical fitness level several times a week. So you notice the difference between true beginners and active beginners is activity level. And this matters because knowing which type of beginner you are will change the advice you should follow. For instance, if you want to know how often you should practice yoga, then the standard advice is 2 to 3 times a week. But what nobody ever mentions is that's for people who are already active. That's right, active beginners. If you're a true beginner, you'll want to do something slightly different, which I'll talk about when we get to that part of the roadmap. Now, both types of beginners are still beginners because they need to learn the skill of yoga. That's so important. Let me say it again. Both kinds of beginners are still beginners. So whether you're a true beginner or an active beginner, you'll benefit from a step-by-step approach. And here's the secret. There's an advantage to each type of beginner. You heard that right. Being a true beginner or an active beginner gives you a benefit when starting yoga. For example, an active beginner is more physically fit and has greater body awareness. So if this is you, some yoga movements will be a little easier. And what's the advantage of being a true beginner? That's easy. You don't have any bad habits that you have to unlearn. Being new will also help to protect you from injury. We'll talk more about that when I share how to practice yoga safely. Of course, there are also drawbacks to both types of beginners. Active beginners, for instance, have a higher level of fitness, so they tend to jump into more challenging classes right away. That's not the problem. The problem is they tend to miss learning the basics of yoga, the foundation they need to build a sustainable practice. And this can show up later in developing bad habits or getting injured. And because they skip the basics, they're probably not getting the true benefits out of yoga, especially feeling more grounded and connected, with less stress and anxiety. True beginners have it a little easier because they have no habits, but that's also their challenge, to keep going long enough to build a habit. Yoga works, but it takes time to work. The odds are you'll notice a difference in the way you feel after just one class, but the effects build up as you keep practicing. And so the main challenge for beginners is to keep on keeping on. Now you know the drawbacks. Let's address one more thing you might be wondering. What if I practiced yoga before? Am I still a beginner? Again, if you've had a break for over 2 years, even if you practiced yoga before, then you're in the true beginner category, as far as fitness goes. But the good news is that the skill you developed before will help you make progress faster. The magic number is around 50. So if you've practiced yoga at least 50 times, that is a full class, then you're probably not in the beginner category when it comes to skill. But, and it's a big but, you'll still benefit from this video because a lot of yoga practitioners are self-taught. That means they look up random videos and watch them without having a plan on how to grow their practice. In fact, every once in a while, we'll have a student in our beginner series course who has practiced for 5 years or more, and they tell us how much it's helped them to learn what yoga is really about. Okay, we've talked about the two types of beginners. Now it's time to move to the second part of the identify stage, which means it's time for a pep talk, because this part is something I like to call, am I too? And this usually sounds like a question like, am I too blank to learn yoga? As in, am I too tight to learn yoga? Or am I too old to learn yoga? Other popular variations are, am I too inflexible or out of shape or overweight to learn yoga? What's behind all this is a conflict. You have a desire and a curiosity to learn yoga, but at the same time, there's a fear holding you back. It's a fear that says, maybe yoga isn't for me. Maybe yoga is only for certain types of people. That's so important, I'm going to recap it. When we ask a question that starts, am I too? What it's really about is what is holding you back. So what's the truth? You're going to want to lean in to hear this because it's a secret not enough people hear. Your body is fantastic. Truly. I mean, look at what it can do. It can change and adapt and grow depending on how you use it. It's true even if you think you're too tight, old, inflexible, out of shape, overweight. Your body is amazing. But even if you don't think so, learning to practice yoga is a way you can enjoy and feel good in your body again. I've seen yoga practitioners in their 70s who move better than people 20 years younger. And I've witnessed countless people lose weight and take back control of their lives because of yoga. The possibility is there, but what you get out of it depends on what you put into it. And I know sometimes we can be tough on ourselves, which prevents us from even wanting to try. The beautiful thing about yoga, though, is that you start when you start. Everyone's yoga journey is different, but they all have a beginning. Yes, everyone starts as a beginner, including the most famous yoga influencer. So it doesn't matter when you start. What matters is that you start. You try, you give it a chance. And when you do, you'll begin to notice changes in the way that you feel. Want to know one more juicy secret? Here it is. You might be waiting for the perfect moment to start a yoga practice. Like, maybe you're waiting for the kids to grow, or to finish school, or to get settled into your job, or retire. But the reality is, there's never a perfect moment to start yoga. You just have to decide to go for it, then do it. I believe in you. Do you believe in you? That's my pep talk. So, there are 2 action steps for this stage. 1, decide which type of beginner you are. And 2, Reevaluate what is holding you back from learning yoga. That takes us to stage 2 called Gear Up. This stage is about making sure you have everything you need to start yoga successfully. The first part of gearing up is to make sure you have the right equipment. And not to worry, because you really won't need a lot of equipment. In fact, you can probably borrow most of the items because all you need for yoga is a mat and maybe a small hand tool. That's it. If you do decide that you're going to continue with yoga, then I recommend getting some good equipment. And good doesn't mean expensive, but you want to invest in things that last and do the job right. If we're being realistic here, a good quality yoga mat is anywhere from $100 to $150, or about the cost of a pair of quality running shoes. The difference is, if you buy the right mat, you'll never need to buy another one. But why do you want to invest in a good mat? 3 words: to prevent injury. You see, the most important job of a yoga mat is to prevent slips and falls. And besides giving you traction, a good yoga mat provides support for your joints. Now, if all you have is a cheap mat, you can make do. Just be careful, because it can turn into a slip and slide if you sweat. Also, try to avoid practicing on carpet without a mat, because that too can get slippery. Oh, one more thing. You'll want to get a set of yoga blocks. And a set is 2 blocks, 1 for each hand. There are many kinds of blocks out there, and I think I've experimented with them all. I have travel blocks and wooden blocks and carved blocks, but if I could choose only one, it would be a 4-inch dense foam block. Dense foam is great because you can really stand on it. Cheaper foam blocks are too squishy and don't always provide the support you need. And wooden blocks, they just hurt your butt to sit on. So I don't recommend those, unless woodworking is your thing. By the way, I'll put links down in the description for gear I recommend and use. And you should know, I may get a commission for purchases made through those links. Do you absolutely need blocks? No. You can get by with other things in the meantime. You can use cans of beans or tomatoes. Some people use thick books that they duct tape to prevent them from opening. But again, if you're going to do yoga regularly, you'll want to have your own equipment. That brings us to the big topic of yoga clothing. And here's my advice. Just wear something you can sweat and move around in comfortably. Doesn't have to be anything special. And this is coming from someone who has over 20 pairs of yoga pants. But I'm a yoga professional who does this for a living and teaches public classes. But when I do yoga at home, I often practice in pajamas or shorts if it's the summertime. Now, this advice is based on the idea that you're practicing at home. If you're going to your yoga studio, you can always call ahead and ask what they recommend you wear. They also usually have that kind of information available on their website too. The one thing to watch out for is wearing a shirt so big or loose it goes over your head when you're bending over in postures, like downward facing dog. That's not a good time. Do you have to practice in bare feet? It's a good idea because it's a safety thing. Being barefoot on a good mat is going to give you the most stability. If you wear socks, you run the risk of slipping and falling, so I don't recommend it. And if you have yoga clothes, great. But I wouldn't go out and spend a lot of money on yoga clothing, especially in the beginning. I'd invest your money in a good mat first, and then blocks, and then later on, if you want to add some yoga clothing for fun, go for it. Oh, one more thing you want to have with you is water. It's always a great idea to stay hydrated anytime you work out and exercise. With that in mind, don't let a lack of equipment slow you down. Borrow a mat, grab some cans and a small towel, and get started. You can always upgrade and add on later. And again, if you're going to your local yoga studio, they probably have a mat you can rent and blocks you can borrow. Now that you've got your equipment sorted, the next step is to figure out what the best type of yoga for beginners is. I made an entire video on the different types of yoga. I'll put the link in the description. But what I didn't share there was the best type of yoga for beginners, which I'll do in a moment. You see, the common advice you hear from people is to try a bunch of different styles and see which one works for you. I don't think that's the best strategy though, for a few reasons. First, I think you always have to start with yourself and what your goals are for practicing yoga. If your goal is to relax and do a gentle practice, then the usual recommendation is Hatha yoga. However, you might also enjoy a yin or restorative yoga class. But if your goal is to build strength and still have relaxation, then you're going to need another type of yoga entirely. Another consideration is if you want to do a class in person or online. Clearly online is going to give you more options, but you might prefer to go to your local yoga studio if there's one near you. But no matter whether it's in person or online, the biggest challenge is that each type of yoga can be wildly different depending on the teacher. You see, yoga is similar to a subject you took in school, like biology. Some teachers might put you to sleep when teaching biology, while others make it come alive. The same is true of yoga, so the teacher makes all the difference. With all that in mind, I think the best yoga for beginners is vinyasa yoga, if it's taught step by step. What do I mean by step by step? I mean, the teacher can guide you in and out of the postures one step at a time. The opposite of that is just saying the name of a yoga pose and expecting you to know how to do it. As I mentioned, the teacher makes a huge difference. And Vinyasa yoga can be taught in a lot of different ways, depending on what the teacher focuses on. It can be more like a power yoga class, where you move quickly from posture to posture. This movement is why Vinyasa is also known as flow yoga, because you move or flow from pose to pose using your breath to set the rhythm. However, Vinyasa doesn't have to be fast or vigorous. It can be slow and steady and deliberate. It can feel more like a hatha yoga class, except Vinyasa is typically more challenging. But difficult doesn't have to mean intense. Instead, the challenge can be accessible and appropriate for beginners. But that depends a lot on the skill of the teacher. I recommend Vinyasa because it's the most popular form of yoga, so you're more likely to find a Vinyasa yoga class you like. And while it can be tempting to ask for the easiest type of yoga, and just do that, there's a big reason you don't want to go that route. What's the reason? Well, if a class is always easy, you don't build strength, or endurance, or physical fitness in general. In fact, you're just coasting. Because it turns out you are designed for challenge. And when you give your body a challenge, it loves it. And it responds by growing and adapting to meet the demands of that challenge. For example, imagine you start lifting weights. You might start with a 5-pound weight, and it's a bit of a struggle. Work with me here. But you can get the barbell up 10 times, so you keep doing it. But after a few weeks, you notice that the same 5-pound weight feels lighter. And since the weight didn't change, something else must have. You did. You've gotten stronger because your body has met the challenge and adapted to it. There's another big benefit to practicing Vinyasa yoga because it provides a variety of challenges, because it's known as a variable sequence type of yoga. This means that while you may repeat some postures, no two classes will ever be alike. That's good news for your body because it will have to learn to adapt and get stronger in many different ways. I should point out, not all types of yoga are variable sequences. Some are fixed sequences, meaning they're the same every time you do them. Hot yoga tends to be this way, as are the series and Ashtanga yoga. People like fixed sequences because they are predictable. But the problem with fixed sequences is once your body adapts to the initial challenge, it hits a plateau in strength and flexibility. Because, like the 5-pound weight I mentioned, you've grown accustomed to it. You've grown used to it. And it no longer provides enough resistance to create change. If there's no challenge, there's no change. Another thing you'll want to be aware of is that you can accidentally make a Vinyasa class a fixed sequence practice. How? Well, imagine you find a yoga video online that you like, and then you only did that video. Initially, it helps you to get stronger, but if you keep practicing only that same video, you've turned it into a fixed sequence because it's always the same. By the way, if you're interested in the most effective ways to build strength and flexibility, I go into this in a lot more detail in our beginner series course. So how do you tell which kind of Vinyasa class you're in? Simple. Trust your intuition. Does the class seem fast and intense? You're in a Vinyasa yoga class that is more like power yoga. How about if the class seems gentle and quiet? Well, now you're in a Vinyasa yoga class that feels like Hatha yoga. And if, as a beginner, you find a class that offers step-by-step instructions that are difficult but doable, now you're in the sweet spot. I have one more pro tip on how to tell if the class is step-by-step. Close your eyes. When you do, you should still be able to follow the instructions or cues because they are step-by-step. Now, a quick safety note, be smart about this so you don't fall. A good place to try this is when you're sitting down or lying in a class. While we're on the subject of teachers, here's a quick list of things to look for when choosing a teacher. You already know the first. Do they teach yoga step-by-step? Another key thing is, do they teach with their voice? That means they can guide you in and out of the postures using only verbal cues. The opposite of this is teachers who demonstrate or show the cues with their bodies. Trying to follow a teacher who teaches with a lot of visual cues is hard, especially if you're taking a class online because you're constantly having to look up at the screen instead of being able to follow along by listening. Here's a huge thing to look out for when searching for a teacher. Does the teacher speak in their regular voice? What do I mean by regular? I mean they sound like they're having a conversation with a good friend, rather than it feeling like they are performing. Or maybe they sound sing-song or have another vocal effect to their voice. Anything that suggests that they're trying to speak how they imagine a yoga teacher sounds instead of actually using their natural voice. The final and most important thing to look for when finding a teacher is, do you connect with them? That is, do you know, like, and trust them? If so, you're going to be in good hands and be taken care of. Again, trust your intuition. So now that you know what to look for in a yoga teacher, let's get to the action steps for the gear up stage. 1. Get a mat and 2 blocks. 2. Find a Vinyasa class. And 3. Find a teacher to practice with. Again, you can rewatch this section to remind you of what to look for when choosing a teacher. Stage 3 of our roadmap is called Rhythm, and it's about creating rhythm and routine and prevent anything that might get in the way, like getting injured. First, let's talk about how often to practice yoga. If you're brand new to yoga, or you're just developing your base level of fitness, then you're a true beginner. And for true beginners, your goal is 10 minutes a day, 5 days a week. 10 minutes, 5 days. The schedule does a few things for you. It's realistic, so you'll be successful. It helps you to build momentum. In other words, it helps you to keep moving forward. The schedule will also increase your level of fitness and prepares you for future challenges. And it gives you time to rest and recover, which is an essential part of the equation. Now, the first week or two will be the hardest, but hang in there. Soon you'll begin to notice a difference in how you feel and how the work gets easier. In fact, you'll actually start to look forward to your yoga practice because it helps you to feel good. After 30 days of this schedule, you can increase your time on the mat to a minimum of 30 minutes, while aiming for 2 to 3 times per week. What about if you're an active beginner? Remember, this is someone who regularly exercises and moves their body already. If this is you, you can start with 2 to 3 times a week immediately. But I wouldn't recommend practicing 4 to 5 times a week until after your first 30 days, because you still need time to adjust to how yoga asks you to move. Most of us are used to moving our bodies in many different ways, such as backward and forward and to the side, etc. 30 days gives you the time you need to adjust. By the way, did you know that the number one mistake people make when starting a yoga practice is that they overdo it? That's right, they do too much too soon. The schedule I just gave you, though, avoids that mistake. Okay, so we addressed how often to practice, so let's talk about how long you should practice. I've already mentioned 10 minutes a day for true beginners. For an active beginner, aim for 30 minutes 2 to 3 times a week. After your first month of keeping this schedule, you can bump it up to 60 minutes. However, being an active beginner also gives you some other options. For instance, if you have a solid fitness base and you want to jump it right to 60 minutes, that's not a problem. Just don't get carried away by doing something like signing up for a week-long yoga retreat when you've never practiced yoga before. Oh, and if you're a true beginner and you do your 10 minutes and you still feel good, you can go longer if you want. Just be sure to pay attention to how you feel afterward, because if the next day or two you feel a lot of soreness, you'll know you went too far. It's a balancing act between too much and not enough. I'm being conservative here because my main goal is to set you up for success. And the schedule I just shared, it assumes you're strategic and following a plan in the way you're practicing. Remember, a random approach will give you random results. Now you may be asking, what about doing yoga every day? Isn't yoga a daily practice? Well, yes and no. I'll explain the no part first. The physical practice of yoga, what you're probably most familiar with, was never meant to be done daily. In fact, practicing that way can tear your body down rather than build it up. That's worth repeating. If you don't provide breaks and regular rest for your body, you're just breaking it down instead of building it up. And I get that it's tempting to think you'll get stronger faster if you do yoga more, like every day. But the science tells us you get stronger when your body has time to heal and recover. So any smart yoga schedule is going to build in rest days. However, notice how I said the physical practice of yoga. Yoga is also a mental practice that teaches you how to be more present and aware. We do this through meditation, breathing, and mindfulness practices. So yes, you can absolutely do those every day if you want to. If you want to know more, check out our Beginner Series course where I explain how all of these practices work. I know it can be confusing to keep track of when to practice. So at the end of this video, I share how to get a printable 4-month schedule, which is perfect for both true and active beginners. There's one more part to the rhythm stage of the roadmap, and that's preventing anything from stopping your momentum, like injury. So this next part is called How to Practice Yoga Safely. Because if something's not safe, it's not fun. So safety is always in the back of my mind whenever I teach, because yoga should be fun. This topic also addresses another common question, which is how to do yoga the right way. Again, I'm pulling back the curtain and giving you a behind-the-scenes look, because there are 2 common strategies to keep people safe when practicing yoga. Maybe you've heard one of these. The first involves being very specific in how you move your body. This is achieved through something called alignment. You can think of alignment as how your body should line up in certain yoga postures. So you might hear a yoga teacher say, bring your shoulders over your hips, or turn your back foot in 30 degrees. The thinking is the alignment keeps you safe because you're doing postures the right way. But there are a few challenges with this way of thinking. First, focusing solely on alignment can make you think there's only one way to do a yoga posture. And that can lead to a harsh approach where you try to force your way into the posture because you're trying to do yoga correctly. Or worse, you end up constantly comparing yourself to others or to some unrealistic version of the posture that you see online. That's not a good way to feel good about yourself. And by putting all of your attention on alignment, you miss out on the other more important parts of a well-rounded yoga practice, like noticing how you feel. There's so much more to yoga, such as learning how to relax through breathing practices or grounding your mental and emotional states. If you focus only on alignment, yoga can become a source of stress instead of stress reduction, and that's not good. The biggest challenge with alignment, though, is this. Alignment cues assume everyone has the same body. And a quick look around tells you that's not true. We all look different. That's true even if you're an identical twin, because you're gonna have a different life experience from your twin. So we all have different bodies. Some people have longer legs, some have bigger feet, shorter arms. So we're all going to look a little different in the postures. And that's fine, because yoga is really about honoring who you are, instead of trying to fit into some kind of mold. The other common strategy to keep people safe is just to have them avoid things. So for example, if your wrists hurt in a posture, a teacher might tell you to avoid doing that posture. But remember, your body gets strong depending on how you use it. It adapts to challenge. But it can also go backward. If you do less than you used to do, your body will get used to that, and then it will only be able to do less. What that means, for example, is if you skip the work that challenges your wrists or your back or whatever body part the posture is working on, your body will be less likely to be able to do that going forward. Of course, if your pain is because of an injury or other condition, you're going to want to check in with your doctor before starting yoga practice. Now you know the problem with the two main strategies to keep you safe. Here's a better way to avoid injury. Start where you are and build strength and mobility slowly. This way honors your body today and allows you to make small improvements in strength and flexibility and endurance over time. Why is this better? Because it's based on the best movement science we have available today. It gives your body time to adjust to the new stresses you're putting on it, which prevents common setbacks like injury and inflammation. So how fast can you go? Here's a simple test. You want to ensure that you can do the work of each yoga posture before trying to make it more difficult. Skipping steps or rushing can lead to poor habits that will actually hold you back. By working in a slow and deliberate way, you're creating a foundation that can support your entire yoga practice. There's much more to it, of course, but the main idea is to start where you are and build strength and mobility over time. Just like in our earlier example, where you first lift a 5-pound weight comfortably before trying something heavier. One more thing to add. I mentioned there's an advantage to being a true beginner, especially when it comes to preventing injury. This may seem counterintuitive, but true beginners usually don't have a lot of flexibility, which means they don't go as far in yoga postures. And because they don't go as far, they are less likely to injure themselves. Their lack of mobility actually helps to protect them. How cool is that? It's time for your 2 action steps for stage 3. 1, follow the practice schedule based on the type of beginner you are. And 2, focus on building strength and mobility slowly. Now it's time for our final stage, called engage. This is where we figure out exactly what to practice. So let's discuss the best yoga postures for beginners. It's amazing how many yoga postures are out there. It can be overwhelming and confusing trying to figure out what to do, especially if you're new. And if you do a search, you see conflicting advice. That's because there's a tendency to think that the most common poses are the poses beginners should learn. But that's not quite right. First, you need to know the easy way to think about yoga poses. What's that way? Break them into big groups. These groups can go by several names like categories or families or classifications. But the important thing is that they give us a helpful way to talk about the postures. And we can use groups to answer the question of what the best yoga poses for beginners are. Because it's the group of postures called standing poses. You probably know some standing pose names already, like Warrior 2, or Triangle Posture, or Tree Posture. They're called standing postures because they're done standing up. Standing postures have several advantages over other posture groups for beginners. First, standing poses don't require you to get up and down from the floor frequently, or to get on your knees. This makes them more accessible for more people. They're also easy to provide support for. All you need is a wall or a steady chair you can hold on to. And standing poses help you build strength because they use large muscle groups. Finally, standing yoga postures are an excellent way to learn yoga because many other posture groups cross over into them. That means you can explore other pose categories like twists or back bends or forward folds just by doing a standing pose with those elements. This gives you a taste of the different postures available in a way where you feel stable and strong. In fact, stable and strong is the best way to describe standing poses. Here's where people get confused about what we're doing in yoga. It's easy to think that yoga is about doing more and more complicated postures, as if the goal was to one day do a handstand or get your foot behind your head. Yoga can make you strong, flexible, and pain-free, that's true. But more importantly, it can help you to be calm, centered, and more connected to yourself and others. Just imagine what it would be like to feel good in your body. But that doesn't come from what yoga postures you're doing, but how you are doing the postures. So ultimately, the best yoga pose is one where you can breathe, feel, and pay attention. It's a posture where you feel grounded and connected, a place where you are calm and relaxed. And this is true whether you're brand new to yoga or you've been practicing for decades. Your action step for stage 4 is simple. focus on practicing standing poses. Now in a moment, as I mentioned, I'm going to share exactly how to get a printable schedule. And I'll share one more big mistake people make when trying to learn yoga. But first, a recap of what we discussed so far. I've given you a step-by-step roadmap to make real progress with yoga, including action steps for each stage. You now know the key mistakes that prevent people from getting better at yoga, and you understand what may be holding you back and the truth about it. I showed you why the type of beginner you are makes a huge difference in how you move forward, and I've given you the gear you need, including what to wear. You now know the best type of yoga to practice if you're a beginner, why the teacher makes such a huge difference, and what to look for in a teacher. Plus, a quick way to tell if you're in the right class for you. You discovered the difference between fixed and variable sequences, and which one is the best way to build strength and flexibility effectively. I made it easier to start learning yoga by giving you a clear, easy to follow schedule. And you now know the #1 mistake people make when learning yoga, and how it slows them down or even stops their progress. You learned the 2 most common strategies used to avoid injury, where those approaches fall down, and a better way based on science. And you're clear in the best yoga postures for beginners and why it's not about the yoga posture, but how you do it that matters. Knowing what you now know, do you feel more comfortable starting a yoga practice? Have you found this video valuable? Have you figured out what kind of beginner you are? And is it fair to say that following this 4-step roadmap makes it a lot easier to get going with yoga? Let me pause for a moment though and address one of the biggest concerns people have. Can I do this by myself? And the answer is yes. Yes, you can. I have absolute confidence that you could take everything we covered here today and on your own, go out and put it into action and get the results that you previously thought weren't possible. I'm certain with just the roadmap and the information we covered in this video and left to your own resources, your time, your effort, that you're able to move forward in a way most people will never be able to. And if that were your only option, you could do it. But what if there's another option? An option where we can go at this together. A chance to go deeper than we can in just one video. What if I played an active role in your results and supported your success? How would that make things different for you? Do you think in that case, I could stack the deck in your favor by sharing all the resources, knowledge, and insights I have to offer you so that you can go even deeper and get the results you're after? And if you had help, wouldn't it make it a lot easier and a lot more fun to learn yoga? If I had that option for you, would you love to hear more about it and what it could do for you? That's why I'm so excited to introduce you to the Beginner Series course. This is the fastest and easiest way to learn yoga, and it's been pioneered, refined, and real-world tested for over 15 years. And it can absolutely help you and make a difference in not only how quickly you learn yoga, but how much you get out of it. Best of all, it's 100% online. There's a reason you want to learn yoga, and I bet it's one of these 3. You want to find a way to relieve your stress and anxiety, or you want to improve your physical health, which includes being stronger, more flexible, and in less pain. Or it could be number 3, you want to feel more grounded and develop a deeper connection with yourself and others. If you want to get the benefits of yoga, you have to learn the right way. The Beginner Series course gives you that way. To join the waitlist, here's what you do. 1. Go to oneflowyoga.com/begin. 2. Once you enter your name and email, you'll get an email confirmation that confirms you're on the waitlist. And 3, be sure to look for that in your inbox, as that's also how we'll announce when the course opens. And you don't want to miss that, as it's only open for a short time. That's it. And there will be those that say that I'm simply trying to sell you a course. And they are absolutely right. Because when you have something that is right for people, that you know can improve their lives and speed up their progress, wouldn't you want people to have that? So absolutely, I would love for you to join us in the Beginner Series. Okay, as I promised you, here's how to get a printable schedule. And I'm gonna do even better than that. I made you the ultimate guide on how to start yoga, and it has the printable schedule in it. To get it, just go to oneflowyoga.com/guide. The guide has everything we covered today and more, so be sure to check it out. I also said that I'd share the other big mistake people make when trying to learn yoga, and that's trying to learn it alone. Yoga was always meant to be learned with others because it's hard to do it alone, and it's hard to make progress quickly without any feedback from an expert. But now you have a choice. You can have a guide, me, to help you. I hope to see you inside the Beginner Series course, and I wish you much luck and success on your yoga journey.